So welcome today to Capra Convos. And here I am again. I'm on this island home, Topsail Island in North Carolina. I got my good friend Lise here with me.
Yes, hello.
And I really thought Lise would have so much to captivate you with what has gone on in her life. And Lise has been a great friend, but not only that, has gone through her Bible school at Faith Ministries many years ago, and is ordained in ministry, very prophetic, gifted prophetic teacher, but way so much more. And I just wanted her to share, after she was ordained, how she took this unique path and what she got into. So you can say hi to everybody and tell a little about this path.
Okay. So, well, it's a fun sort of segment, I think, that you were wondering about of my life, because I really had done some things that were administrative, but really wanted to do ministry things, and ended up working at a back pain care center, worked in insurance, and but my heart was always for ministry. So in my mind, I think it was like full-time ministry was going to look a certain way. Excuse me, but then I ended up doing this. I felt like the last job that I had as the director of a back pain care center was what gave me, I could tell that it was giving me some building blocks. But about 6 years in, I realized I need to go. I want to do something that's I could be really passionate about. And so that's when I talked to you about it, because I was having these dreams that I was working with young women who had had unplanned pregnancies, and that I was doing some form of help for them, like teaching or something like that. And so I was looking forward to that.
You know, we talked to you, and even last week when Dennis and I shared, we've been talking about us all taking a step, launching out into things God's got for us that is ministry, but doesn't exactly look like typical, stereotypical type of ministry in a church, but yet is truly meeting the needs of people.
Yeah.
And that's what you did with this passion you had for unwed mothers.
Yes. Oh yeah. It was an evolving thing, but what I did was I ended up leaving the back pain care center with this dream in my heart of something new to do. And honestly, I didn't launch right into it, and I was just praying about it. And I remember I talked to you, and I said, you know, I need to connect somehow. Do you know anybody? And you knew of this organization, and it was actually had sort of two parts of the sides of the organization. One of them was working with unplanned pregnancy, women in unplanned pregnancy, and had a fantastic vision of free services for them, being right next door to Planned Parenthood, and trying to help them to make the choices that were ahead of them in a life-affirming way with lots of resources.
Wow.
Things.
So, but just as you're saying this about your own personal passion to go into this vein, unwed mothers, give us a little background. You don't have to tell a long story, but where you've come from that'll help people to really connect.
Well, I had a personal story and of unplanned pregnancy, and not once but twice, and in both those instances I was 17, the first one, and I ended up, through counseling and things, making a decision to make an adoption plan for that.
Wow.
For my son, and didn't know it was son at that time. And then 3 years later, I was engaged to be married, and but I was still very young and didn't have a great job, and we broke up, and I ended up being pregnant again. And this second time, I made another really hard choice to give this baby up for adoption. So,
but you're hearing her adoption,
yes,
not abortion. And even as a young girl, giving these babies, these children, these human beings life, and families.
Yes. It was the hardest decision I've ever made. And it was extremely challenging, but I knew I was carrying a baby. I knew I wanted that child to have the best life, and I didn't feel like I was it for that child at that point. So
did someone help you, or you made that choice on your own?
Yes, no, I did. I went to a place called Birthright, and I think it was a Catholic organization, but it was some kind of Christian roots. And I went there, and the person helped sort of talk me through it, sort of diffuse the feeling of being so afraid that I didn't know what I could possibly do about this. And so I found that that's the one thing that I could understand about people, is that you get into a situation that's unplanned already, and when it's of that magnitude, you start making decisions that you may not have made if you were thinking more correctly about your life, your values, what you wanted for your future, and what about this child.
Wow.
So I really was so grateful for that help. So I went to this organization. They were on summer hiatus when you had introduced me to them, and but they said, we do have this sister organization, and they are in the middle and high schools, and they are doing a curriculum. It's called Youth Development Curriculum, that was talking to kids about the pressure and risks that they are under at a young age from being in certain situations, and how to avoid them, how to be more assertive, etc. So they were getting ready to do this training, and they said, would you like to do that, rather than coming on board with this other organization at that point. And I was fearful, really intimidated to think that I would be talking to young people about sex. It just sounded strange to me.
So you weren't in youth, you'd never been in youth ministry.
No.
I know for a long time,
No.
Lise had a home group that really served people in her group that, you know, came from all walks of life.
Yeah.
But no specific youth ministry, but God had put this on your heart to help unwed mothers, and then to also help young people with these choices.
Yeah. Well, and the thing was, once I heard that, it just captured my heart, what they were doing, because I realized, what would it be like for me as a young person to have someone come into my life, come into my school, come into my setting, my world, not me go to theirs, but us coming into the schools, not them coming to us. And how does that work? And this organization was actually already doing it, and they were doing it with a great amount of excellence.
So what was it like in the schools? Were they receiving what you had to say?
Oh yeah. Actually, you know what the thing was, is I think in my mind I must have thought these kids will be resistant in some way. What would that be like? It's going to be very uncomfortable, very awkward. But the truth was, I had a complete wake-up call the very first time I went into school, because the kids were dying to have the information. They were excited that we were there.
Wow.
Yeah, they couldn't wait to have the dialogue, the information, because actually they'd already been hearing things. And they were getting swayed one way or another, but usually by peers rather than someone else.
Wow.
And here we were with information that was so wisely done. It graduated itself every year from 6th grade till high school, seniors. And the information got a little bit more detailed, a little bit more on healthy relationships as the years progressed. But I kind of went into it full bore.
So did it help them with sex education too? So that they knew what statistics were about STDs and all that?
Oh yes.
So it was kind of a sobering thing for them.
Absolutely.
Wow.
First day we went in. Of course, the cool thing for me too was, I told you I felt this little bit of intimidation, but as I said, they were doing this with excellence. They had a curriculum that everything was backed by the CDC, the NIH. So all their information was very detailed and very on point as far as the cutting edge medical research and data. And so, yes, the very first day we talk about the fact that how many people are in America? 330 million. Okay, how many of those do you think have STDs? And they were like, oh, probably, a couple thousand or 10,000, they'd raise their hand. And I said, well, what would you think if I told you it was 65 million?
65 million.
Growing at a rate of 19 million a year.
19 million a year. Sexually transmitted disease. Which
at that point, of course, some people get cured. So then you're not consistently having that number exponentially grow past that point of that you would not be able to imagine. But the kids were shocked. They were that caught their attention the very first day.
Wow.
So And then from there, it was just talking about, how to, when are you at the most risk? What are those situations where you don't want to feel pressure? I don't want to be in a situation where I don't do what I want to do. What are those situations? Have you ever thought ahead about those? What are those? And what about parties where parents were not home? Your boyfriend's house when his parents weren't home?
So this is just real basic, rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Confronting with a lot of tact and wisdom these hard issues for kids, but information that empowers them.
Yes. Well, and we went past all the medical data of STD rates. 1 in 4 teens that are sexually active are going to get an STD. We got past. There was a day that's dedicated to that, but one of the other, several of the other days are about. So how do you stand up for yourself? What would you say? And we actually gave them verbalization skills. We role played in class. So one student would stand up and say, well, everybody's doing it, and they'd have the answer in their book. Well, I'm not everybody, and we'd have another student stand. So they were role playing this, and for the really shy kids, it made them hugely. They actually felt like, maybe I could stand up for myself and say something, and not having any exposure to this, it just all felt pressure and whatever the peers were saying. So it really, the cool part of the experience too for me, as I started doing it more and more, I ended up doing it for 3 years.
3 years of going into
Yes.
How many times? Like once a week or?
I would go for 8 days solid to one school,
Okay.
middle or high school, wherever they sent me. And I did that just as many as they could do. They were off for Christmas, but they were doing it not always through the summer, but sometimes they had summer school. So yeah, most of the year I'd be at some different school from.
And that to me though is so relevant, so practical, and so empowering and so hands-on. It's true ministry because you were doing something that changed the course of their lives.
Yes.
And empowered them. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to break that stereotype that sometimes we have about serving the Lord and what that looks like, because it's so many different ways that we can reach people and make a difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that I thought was very unique was that I went to a training one day. They had a new curriculum that they were doing, and in this curriculum, they were going to be training in about a dozen coaches, and out of those dozen coaches, I started looking around the room, and they went around asking what people's background was. Out of those dozen, I think there was 10 that were in the ministry, and that was a shock to me. I mean, that really impacted my heart. I started thinking, this is the church at work.
Yeah.
This is where we need to be, is where we are affecting students.
Yeah.
Over a 10-year period, they got to educate 75,000 students.
And this is in the state of Missouri.
Yes, middle and high school.
75,000 students affected through this.
Yes.
And just curious, was there some other contact with them ever outside of the school thing? Did they ever go to any outside rallies? Or?
Yes, yeah, they had options. There were different things that we would do. I worked with Johnson County Health Department. I worked with parents. I worked with youth at a youth rally, big brothers and sisters.
Any rallies where they would, be able to clearly hear the gospel?
Not necessarily, but here's the funny thing is that I had many students say that they knew I was a Christian. Many students that asked questions afterwards. We were allowed to say, well, of course, you can pray. Church is a great source, but it wasn't in the curriculum. And because we were under a government grant, we weren't allowed to.
Amazing. So under a government grant, you had these stipulations, but yet you would answer these questions and direct them to the Lord afterwards.
Yes.
Which is amazing.
Afterwards.
Which is what a difference we can make if we seize these opportunities.
Yeah.
And then just before we go today, I don't know if you have a scripture that you wanted to share, but I wanted you to tell us too about what we're going to go on later this week. I'm going to have Lise on again and somebody else, and I wanted you to just tell a little about that story, how that unfolded for you.
Well, can I share one thing before that? I did want to share this just because it helped me as well. In working with parents, one thing that I found was that a lot of parents felt like this was, they felt hypocritical because they hadn't done it exactly right. So for them to have these conversations, they didn't know exactly how to do it. And so in many ways, and so many outside forces are trying to tell them this is the way it is. You need to just lower the bar because kids are going to do what they're going to do.
I remember,
we're not lowering the bar.
I remember that having that feeling, and I was so challenged and encouraged by you saying, no, they really will respond to this.
Yes, and we saw statistical changes
from the students. Changes.
We surveyed them prior to the training and surveyed them after the training about the choices that they felt comfortable with, what they were going to do. So that was amazing.
And
so,
young people need someone in their life that can help them make wise choices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so as far as my own life, so I had, I ended up being able to be connected with my birth children. And one was many, many years ago, 20 years ago, and it was an unbelievable story, just full of miracles beyond my imagination. And then, as you know, I reconnected with my daughter just 4 years ago.
Wow.
And
so when we come back on Thursday, we're going to tell more of this side of the story, and we want to eradicate a stigma, and we won't even go into it now, but you'll want to tune in and share this video with somebody else, because it can really change a person's life. And the story that Lise has lived out through prayer, through walking with Jesus, is just a divine connection. And I know God wants to multiply the impact of this. So if you just want to look in the camera, say hey to people and pray, and then tune back in with us on Thursday on Capra Convos. We're going to discuss it some more.
Yes, yeah. So I just pray for you that I think the scriptures that came to mind for me when I was thinking about this story was trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. And that he has invested in us talents. And I know Jesus gave that parable of the talents. And when he sows them, how they multiply is by using them and developing them. So my prayer for you would be that you would say yes in the face of intimidation, and say yes to the fact that you're full of light. You're a city set on a hill and not under a basket. And let your light so shine that men would see your good works and glorify God in heaven. So
awesome. Thank you, Lise.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone. Go to capramin.com to connect with us, to see what we're doing, where we're going, and any way you can pray for us and support us with our work in the world, preaching the gospel.